Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech protected.
Good evening, and thank you for dropping by. My name is Bill Morse, and the name of this program is What Do You Think? This is a call-in program whereby I ask a question and you call in with your answer. There is no right or wrong answer. It all depends on your perspective, your experience, and that's what we would like to hear about. So last week, the question was, is there a decision that you've made in your life that you now regret and would like to redo? Part of your life that you would like to hit delete and redo? Last week, when we asked that question, we had a gentleman call in who ran his own company. It was an electronics company, and he had been in business. He started the business as an electrical engineer about 30 years ago. And he mentioned that his biggest regret is that he didn't work for somebody else. Now, why would somebody who has their own business later regret starting up their own business and now wish that they were working for someone else? Well, if you were tuned into the program last week, again, we're on every Thursday at 6:30, then you would have known that the reason was competition, market competition from overseas, especially in the electronics field. This caller, this gentleman, his company manufactures LED lighting, light-emitting diode lighting. And because of trade agreements whereby there are, unfortunately, no protections for pricing or for environmental concerns, his Chinese competitors were able to make the same product for 1/5 the cost, because obviously he cannot pay his workers the same $2 a day that, or I believe it was $2 an hour that their Chinese counterparts were being paid. So his regret in life was not foreseeing the way that businesses were being outsourced for a cheaper product and the impact this would have on smaller businesses as well as larger businesses, not only in the electronics field, which has been taken over by China and a few other countries in the Pacific Rim, but also the impact that it has had on employees that have worked for him for over 20 years that he considers a business family, and that he is now faced with letting go because of the competition and also the bump in the road from the last 12 months of the coronavirus reaction in government and also in business. So the question remains for this week is, if there was something you would change in your life, a decision that, given hindsight, you believe was the wrong one, what would it be? It doesn't have to be personal. It could be, and you don't have to identify who you are. This gentleman did not identify who he was. So it's just, if you feel like sharing it, I will share one personal experience or one decision that I made that I have regretted for a while, and that was a decision in politics. I was part of a group on a council that was faced with the proposal from the state education department of building a school on park property. The park belonged to the municipality, and the park was on waterfront, and the state education department wanted to build a marine science high school on a section of the park that ran along the water and had access to the nearby streets. We had people on both sides of the fence that wanted the school, because had the school not been placed in our community, it would have been placed in another. There were also people that thought the offer of $1.5 million for the property that would be taken up within the limits of the park was not enough. And back and forth, ultimately I voted with the tax group, or not with the tax group, but with those in opposition, saying that the 1.5 million was not enough. Well, you can imagine what happened. The State Department of Education and the people within that group that had the survey responsibility of where to locate the school went to another community. There were other communities with water access, and so our community lost the opportunity. We lost the 1.5 million that the Department of Education was going to offer. We lost also the promise of revamping that section of waterfront and making it public access with a boathouse and a rebuilt beach. That was all part of the school location plan as well. So not only were we out the 1.5 million, but nothing has changed on that section of waterfront in the park. The beach is further eroded. In fact, the bathrooms that existed there have been condemned and blocked up. So it was a mistake. So my part, that is a mistake that I will freely admit, and I wish that we had been more welcoming to this school proposal. We could have used the 1.5 million in our budget because there are always shortfalls, especially when you're in a community that has a lot of needs, social needs. And we could have had a nice boathouse for the public to use when the school was not in session, and also a cleaned up sandy beach that people could be using during the summer. So my example of a decision that I've regretted, and I've stated this to other people that were in favor of the school location. I've said, you were right. We should have supported this school proposal. Unfortunately, the timing of the proposal was coincided with other schools being rebuilt and opened, and an incredible amount of money coming from the state for new school construction. And obviously, with new school construction, the costs they never remain where they were. Sometimes they double or triple because of different issues, materials, labor, unforeseen environmental conditions where the school is located, et cetera, et cetera. It's a very time-consuming, very complicated, and sometimes a very expensive proposal, building schools, any institution that is going to serve the public, but in particular children. So that is my example. One more political example of a decision that was perhaps the wrong one. This was probably 12 or 14 years ago. We had someone running for re-election as governor. She had served with the governor that was arrested on corruption charges. Subsequently, he was convicted and served, I believe, 2 years in the federal penitentiary in Danbury, Connecticut. His running mate, or lieutenant governor, kind of, what's the word, fell into the position. And she was now seeking re-election, and she was at a local theater in a debate with her competitor from, not competitor, but the opposition from the other party. And the question was to both people, both the former lieutenant governor, who is now the acting governor, and the mayor of a rather large city that was running as the candidate from the other party. And again, the same question: is there anything in your political life that you would like to change or would like to do over, given the results or given hindsight, which is what we all get once a certain amount of time distances us from the decision, when it was hot and the fallout later on. And I believe the gentleman running against her, who was a mayor, as I said there's certain situations, labor situations, I wish I had approached differently in negotiations. My lack of knowledge or my lack of quick decisions cost the taxpayers money, and that we did not get the most favorable labor contract from X, Y, and Z groups. And so the taxpayers have to pay for my greenness or my lack of negotiating skills with these various bargaining groups. That was his answer. The woman who was the lieutenant governor, now the acting governor, running for election on her own merits, was given that same question. Is there any decision in your past that you would think differently today and reverse if you were given the chance? And she said no. And that was it. Well, the audience in the theater, and it was packed. There were probably, I'd say, 600 or 700 people in this theater. As the proof, you could have heard a pin drop. It was very quiet, and then people started moaning. And it wasn't from pleasure. It was hard to believe that she would give such a short response. And I would venture to say she was elected on her own merit because the person running against her, the mayor of the city, was considered a weaker candidate. But I can assure you that she lost support for that less than what I would say genuine or sincere answer. There are times when you show strength, and there are times when you show humility and you acknowledge mistakes. As a stronger person, you acknowledge the mistakes and you move on from there. So just another example of a person who refused to acknowledge mistakes, and in this case gambled and won by not really losing an election because of the way she answered that one question in a relatively small group of several hundred people. So, again, that is our question for this week. Again, we're repeating it because we only had one caller last week that gave us their take on a personal or a commercial decision, a business or a career decision that he later regretted. So, again, this is a program for you to participate, for you to call in and give us your take on a decision that you regret, and what you would like to have changed, given the hindsight that you now possess. So, we have a call coming in. Hello, you are on the air with Bill Morse, and is there a decision that you have made in your life that you would like to change? And if you could, what would be the reason?
Hi, Bill. This is Carla, and something that I've thought about for many years. I'm not saying I exactly regret it, but I went to school as an artist and as a teacher because in my family back in the day, having another, like a fallback job and teaching was the perfect profession for a woman. I went to school also for being an art teacher. At least I thought I'd teach what I love to do. But getting out of college, I had the opportunity to get my master's. And also, I thought about just being an artist, just doing my work. But I had a lot of financial responsibilities. I had to pay back my loans. And I didn't have any extra money. And my parents were very loving, but they didn't think being an artist was the best profession, especially for a woman. So there was no support there. So I took the easier route, which I did have a degree in teaching, and I did like teaching. But I sometimes wonder if my life would have taken a different route. If I had just said, screw it all, I'll, be a waitress or something and, do my artwork, get a studio. But that would have taken money that I had no money. So I just think that it's important to really think when you're younger, like not to be so afraid of the unknown. And I don't blame my parents for it. I was raised a certain way and I kind of believed a lot of what they said. But now that I'm older and I've shown my work a lot, and not that I can make a living off of it right now, but I don't have to, luckily. I kind of, it's not a regret, but in a way I kind of wish I had pursued it for a few years, at least just to see if I could have managed to take care of myself, and perhaps I would have grown quicker as a visual artist if I had pursued it. But then again, I think I was a pretty good teacher, and I learned a lot from that. By teaching, I learned to be a better artist. So, it's not a total regret, but it's a lesson to be learned. That, especially when you're young, what's the big deal? Take a chance. And I see so many young people so afraid of life right now. I'm just putting it out there. If any time is the time to do it, do it when you're young, because you have the energy and the stamina, if nothing else. Having youth on your side does help a lot. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you.
Very good point, Carla. Let me ask you this. When you were in this time frame whereby you knew that having a teaching certificate would at least pay bills on a regular basis, and it would perhaps you could, while you're teaching, if there's any energy left, and I know from personal experience, most teachers have very little energy left once they're done with a day in class or classes. Mm-hmm. Do you think that you were able to grow, albeit at perhaps a more slower pace as an artist in your craft during this time that you were teaching?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I wasn't going to stop doing artwork. So I continued to do, some people totally give up on that. I knew many art teachers or artists that became teachers, and they never really pursued their art. They just kind of like taught, and then they went home and, raised their family or whatever they did. They were so burned out, I think. But for me, I always pursued my art. And I would say from the time I was in my mid-30s on, I would try to show it, even if it was a small show or whatever, occasionally. When I got to my retirement age, then I really started pursuing that. And so I always did my artwork, no matter what, whether I showed it or not, always did the work. And I always shared it with my students. And I think just it's a natural process to grow as a human being. You have experiences, and my art is very personal to me. And also technique-wise, I got much better, at drawing and sculpting and everything, because I was teaching it every day. Graphic design, all those things, because when you go to college, they don't teach you everything. They don't even teach you how to teach, if you ask me.
That's very true.
You learn some things, the psychology and things like that, but it's sort of like trial by fire. You get in there and you learn what works for you. And it certainly helped with my people skills. And also mentoring. I had some wonderful teachers that I worked with that were also artists, I thought. And we shared that, and they helped guided me as a teacher as I grew, both visually, because I've worked with some very talented people. So I would learn what they knew, too. They would share it with me. I was very lucky that way. So yes, I think it made my artwork better teaching. I think teaching sometimes, because you have to break down certain subjects and how you do things, the craft of it more than per se the art, that comes later. And that kind of, if you can learn the craft of things, let's say pottery or drawing and how to draw things, even if you're not a realistic drawer or whatever, it gives you the freedom of that technique. So when you're ready, if you want to use those tools, you can. So like I said, it's kind of a double-edged sword for me. I don't totally regret teaching at all. I don't. I taught for 30 years. And I never wanted with my art to be beholden to anybody. I wanted to do whenever I had to do something for someone that I didn't want to do, it never came out as good as when I did it just for the love of creating something. And so I don't know. If I was an artist, maybe I would have had to do some of those things to give up that freedom. Whereas the teaching at least gave me a living, and then when I did make my artwork, it was purely from me. But did I learn and grow as an artist? Absolutely.
It sounds to me like you were able to not just keep a passion alive, but actually grow the fire. And in that you had other art teachers in the same school, that's helpful. You didn't stop with just getting by with the minimum of what your students and what your administration expected from you. You actually had the energy and made the time to pursue different avenues within this passion for art. And my hat is off to you. I think that's wonderful. I think there are always adjustments that we would like to have made in the past, but I think you hit the nail on the head. Many people would have said, I'll do art some other time, and they do something entirely for money or for security. It's a teacher that has a family to raise already, a ready-made family, perhaps has difficulty in the household with their spouse. They are the ones, I'm afraid, that, and then as a new teacher, you're given the most challenging classes. That actually puts the squeeze on the new teacher to do the minimum, but try to do it right. And if there is any passion, it's kind of squeezed or under tremendous pressure from the administration and from the challenges that students bring into the classroom, that you don't have any energy left. If you had a drive, it's spent by the time 3:30 comes around. and you start getting into the weekend mode whereby Saturday is the best day of the week, and then Sunday you're starting the whole week again. And it's not a profession, it's a vocation, and it's not for everyone.
No, that's true.
I wish our schools were a little bit more successful in tapping into people's passion.
I agree.
Even if it's just giving them access to books so that they become better readers, the books on subjects that are of interest to the particular student. Anyway,
Yeah.
thank you for the call. I appreciate, I don't know who we is, but I appreciate. I
The royal
appreciate,
we.
yeah, the royal we. I appreciate that input, and I appreciate, on behalf of your students, I want to say thank you for staying with your passion, making it work as a livelihood, and positively influencing thousands of lives. You're like the good doctor. You influence your treatment leads to better lives. If you're a bad doctor, just like a bad teacher, you put up obstacles, and a lot of times with growing up, adolescence, because I believe you said you were in high school, many adolescents are hanging by a thread, and if they have one more teacher that they don't get along with, that's it, they're done with school and they drop out. So I'm sure you're responsible for retaining many students that were hanging on by their fingertips, and I think that's a wonderful gift to have, and it was your presence in that room with all the materials, the clay, the colored pencils, etc. That was a blessing for the school, so I want to thank you, and I hope you are enjoying your retirement.
I am very much, and I learned from them as well.
Very good.
Okay.
Well, thank you for calling,
thank
Carla.
you for this opportunity.
Not at all.
Bye-bye.
Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
You too.
So, that brings us to a close. What I have planned for next week, and please listen to this carefully. I have been in touch with Senator Lay's office, and I've been given the opportunity of fielding questions that you may have for Senator Patrick Lay, one of our two senators from Vermont, Bernie Sanders, of course, being the other. If you have a question for Senator Lay, and you would like to go through this channel or this program, please call next week. I'll be fielding the questions for Senator Lay, getting in touch with him or his office, and I think it would be interesting to hear what some of the answers are to your questions for the senator. So again, next week at 6:30, next Thursday at 6:30, we will be shifting gears a little bit, and I will be taking your questions for Senator Patrick Lay to be answered during hopefully the following program. So again, this is Bill Morse, the host of What Do You Think? And I want to thank you for dropping by, and wish you all a happy Palm Sunday. Cheers.